For today's video, we're going to be talking about evaluating expressions. And evaluating expressions is simply an extension of the order of operations. So the one thing that we're adding to the order of operations is substitution. And all substitution simply means is replacing a term with a different equal term. Thinking about like if you go to a restaurant and you don't like something that comes with your meal, you can substitute a different item on for that meal. Or if your teacher is sick, you get a substitute teacher to replace the teacher for that day. So substitute simply means replacing one term with a different equal term. And specifically, we're going to be substituting in numbers for the variables that they equal. So here's an example. We're told that a is 3 equals 3 and b equals 4, and we want to substitute in the expression 3a minus 4b squared. So to substitute, all we're going to do is anywhere we see an a, we're going to plug in a 3. Anywhere we see a b, we're going to plug in a 4. So what you need to do, especially while you're just starting out and practicing, is anytime you substitute, you need to surround the number when you put it in with some parentheses. So for example, if I've got an a, I'm going to plug in a 3 for it, I want to put parentheses around that 3. And the reason why is if I look at right here, a, b, there's some implied multiplication there. That's a times b. Alright, so if I have ab like this is a times b. Well, if I just plug in 3 and then I plug in 4 from b, well, that looks a lot like 34. But in reality, I want to put parentheses so that I know that this is 3 times 4, which is 12, not 34. So, if we look at our fully substituted version of this, and in the one spot where we had an a, we put a 3 in parentheses. In the two spots that we put b's, we have a 4 in parentheses, and that's all there is to it for substitution. So what we're going to move on to now is the actual evaluating of a problem. So all it is adding a step to the order of operations, and that step is substitution. So substitution now becomes the first thing we do in the order of operations. We simply substitute our values for their corresponding variables. If it says x is 7, everywhere you see an x you put a 7. If it says g is 19, everywhere you see a g you put a 19. Alright? The rest of the order of operations you should remember. Next comes grouping symbols, which we're going to say also includes absolute value. In case you forgot, all absolute value is it looks like this. It's just two, well, I was going to say it's two vertical bars, but those weren't even close to vertical bars. Two vertical bars, and if I stick a number in there, specifically if I put a negative number in there like -1, the absolute value is just the distance from 0, so the absolute value of -1 is just +1. The absolute value of 1 is also 1. Alright, so our grouping symbols include parentheses, brackets, these square brackets, and they also include absolute value symbols. Alright, after that comes exponents, which we are going to make sure we point out includes square roots, because square roots are a type of exponents. After exponents comes multiplication and division, which you should know by now, we work left to right. And we're going to do all our multiplication and division in one step. We're going to move from the left to the right through the problem and do all the multiplication division. And then finally, addition and subtraction, once again going left to right. So let's look at an example. So here's our first example of an evaluation problem. We're saying evaluate the expression 3x plus 2y cubed minus 9 times the absolute value of y minus x when we know x is 5 and y is 2. So I need you to take a second, write this problem down, maybe try it out yourself before I walk you through it. So go ahead and pause the video now, write this down, try it out. Alright, now that you got it written down, now that you've maybe tried it once, let's look at how we do this problem. So we know our first step now is to substitute. Anywhere I see an x, I put a 5. Anywhere I see a y, I put a 2. And I remember to put those numbers in parentheses so that I don't think that this is 35 instead of 3 times 5, so that I don't accidentally do 22 squared instead of 2 times 2 squared. All right, our next step is we go inside these grouping symbols and we say, well, that's 2 minus 5, that's negative 3. All right, everything outside of these grouping symbols just waits. Our next step is now to get rid of this absolute value symbol. We take the absolute value of negative 3, which is positive 3. Coming up next, we do exponents. So we've got 2 squared. 2 times 2 is 4. So I get 4 here. All of our parentheses, all of our groupings are gone. All of our exponents are gone. So now we move on to multiplying and dividing. Now, all we have in this problem is multiplying. We're going to do it all in one step. We're just going to say, all right, 3 times 5, that's 15. 2 times 4, that's 8. 9 times 3, that's 27. We're just going to do it all as one step. Our multiplication's done. Now, we're going to do our addition and subtraction. We're going to say 15 plus 8, that's 23, minus 27 is negative 4. So negative 4 is what we get for an answer. Hopefully when you did it on your own, that is what you got for an answer. Let's look at a second example of this. Now this problem, we have evaluate when m is 3 and n is 6, and we've got the problem 3mn plus 2m cubed divided by 7m minus n plus 4. Now in this problem, we see something that I feel like I need to explain. And that is that we've got this stuff up on the top, an entire expression up top, and this stuff on the bottom, an entire expression on the bottom. And what you don't see here is that whenever we have an entire expression on one, either in the numerator or denominator of a fraction like this, there are invisible grouping symbols. So I'm going to go ahead and draw these in here. So I'm going to explain what my work's going to look like before I show it to you. What that is I'm going to do the top and the bottom, do everything up top, everything on the bottom before I even think about doing my division. My last step in this problem is going to divide whatever's in the numerator by whatever's in the denominator. So I'm just going to go through it step by step. The first step is obviously substitution. Anywhere I see an m, I get a 3. Anywhere I see an n, I get a 6. I make sure they go in parentheses so I don't mess up. Now, the order of operations is going to proceed differently for the numerator than it does for the denominator. Looking at the numerator, I have no grouping symbols, but I do have exponents, so I'm going to do 3 to the third power. Looking at the denominator, I have no exponents, I do have grouping symbols, so I'm going to go in here and add 6 and 4. So, 3 to the third power is 3 times 3 times 3, that's 27. 6 plus 4, that's 10. Alright, now looking up top, no exponents, so my next step is going to be multiplication. Looking on the bottom, no exponents again, so my next step is going to be multiplication. I just multiply. In the numerator, I say 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 6 is 54. 2 times 27, also 54. And on the bottom, 7 times 3 is 21. So all I did in that is multiplication. All right, now, last step in the numerator is going to be addition. Last step in the denominator is going to be subtraction. 54 plus 54 is 108. And 21 minus 10 is 11. Now, you'll notice I stopped there. Here's the reason why. 108 divided by 11 is not going to give us a nice round integer number. If we were to do 108 divided by 11, we get 9.81 repeating. All right. I'm not a big fan of having crazy decimal numbers. This right here, 108 over 11, that is an exact answer, and it's a perfectly acceptable answer. So if I'm going to get a decimal, in my mind, I say leave it a fraction and just be done with it. And that's how I suggest you do problems like this. So, you see how we did this? We worked through the order of operations in the numerator, we worked through the order of operations in the denominator, and then our last step was to divide. Alright, so I'm going to leave you, as always, with a try it problem. You need to do this problem, write it down in your notes, We will talk about it when you get to class tomorrow. Then you need to summarize your notes and bring all of that with you to class.